Hello and welcome to the channel. I am here for a era review for you guys, kind of. This is kind of a two-in-one era video. Now, this is going to be a 1980s and 1990s era review for the band Queensryche. Now, I initially was just going to do the 80s era in one video and a 90s era in one video, but I decided to why not just combine the two. So we're just going to be focusing on the 80s stuff and the 90s stuff from Queensryche. Now, Queensryche is a band that I did get into a little bit later. I got into them, of course, earlier in 2019, which again is really late, shortly before their album The Verdict came out. And they're probably my favorite progressive metal band these days, or at least one of them. I mean, they're definitely up there for me. But yeah, we're just going to be sticking with the 80s and the 90s material from the band, and we're going to talk about them. So let's go ahead and begin. And it all started with the self-titled Queensryche EP. I mean, this is definitely a great EP. Definitely one of the best EPs that I've ever heard, personally. Queen of the Reich, I mean, it's a Queensryche classic. You cannot go wrong with this song. I love everything from the guitar work to Jeff Tate's vocals, and yeah, I mean, definitely a really great song. And I even like the song Blinded, which is kind of underrated. And of course, The Lady Wore Black is another favorite of mine. I really dig this song. A very dark and moody sounding song, and it has some pretty interesting instrumentation. But yeah, Queensryche EP is definitely great. I really like this EP. And then we of course got the first full-length album from Queensryche, The Warning. Now, this is maybe one of my favorite albums from Queensryche. If you like Iron Maiden, I can guarantee you, you'll love this album. You'll love it, especially if you're a fan of the Peace of Mind and Power Slave era of Iron Maiden. I mean, you'll really dig this album if you like pretty much anything from Maiden's 80s work. But yeah, The Warning's definitely a great album from Queensryche, though. It has great songs, of course, like the title track, Warning. I mean, this song is just fantastic. This is a song that I can't get sick of. Definitely a great opening track for sure. I really love the way it starts, and everything from the riffs to the vocals, and even the solo on here is a big standout to me. I love the solo. And Deliverance on this album is actually kind of underrated. I also really like No Sanctuary. I've always just been drawn to this song due to its dark mood and just the unique instrumentation that it has going for it. I really like this song. And of course, Take Hold of the Flame is another Queensryche classic, and Roads to Madness is another underrated song, and definitely a great closing track. I really like this song structure where you know, everything from the theatrical vibes that you get throughout the song and the just great vocal delivery from Jeff Tate. But yeah, The Warning's definitely a great album. Definitely, I might even say it's one of their best. But yeah, The Warning's definitely a great album. And then we got the album that really helped me get into Queensryche. This was actually my first Queensryche album, Rage for Order, and yeah, definitely a great album. I don't think it's one of their best by any means, but I definitely dig the album. Once again, if you like Iron Maiden, I think you'll really like this album. But yeah, Rage for Order is definitely a great album. I really like Walk in the Shadows, I Dream in Infrared, The Whisper, and what is it? Screaming in Digital. All just solid tracks, but yeah, definitely one of their most 80s sounding albums. I mean, even if you're someone that, you know, isn't into metal, but you like, you know, 80s rock even, I mean, I think this is an album that would even be pleasing to those fans. But yeah, Rage for Order is definitely a really good album. But next up, we got one of the best concept albums of all time, Operation Mindcrime. And I mean, what can I say about this album that has not already been said? This album is just, I mean, it's an amazing album. Maybe even their best album. I don't know. It's really hard to pick a favorite Queensryche album for sure. And it's even hard to pick a favorite era of this band, since the 80s and the 90s work from the band is just great. But Operation Mindcrime, I mean, this album is fantastic. Definitely a great concept album. I really like the title track, Operation Mindcrime. It's really catchy, and I love the drum work and, you know, the vocal delivery from Jeff Tate. And, you know, the drum work is definitely something worth mentioning on this album. The drum work on this album is just, it sounds very raw and just, it's a big standout to me. But yeah, the title track, this one is without exception. This one, it's a fantastic song. I also really like Speak, The Mission, I Don't Believe in Love, and Eyes of a Stranger, of course. I mean, Eyes of a Stranger is one of the best Queensryche songs of all time, if you ask me. I mean, everything due to its, you know, hooky sort of riffs, to its, you know, amazing chorus delivered by Jeff Tate, of course. But yeah, I love the solo in this song and the guitar work. I mean, the whole band is just, you know, phenomenal at what they did with this song. But yeah, the whole album in general is definitely very solid. So yeah, Operation Mindcrime, it's a fantastic album. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't heard it yet. And then we're going to get into the 90s era of Queensryche. We then got Empire, which is their commercially successful album. I can definitely see why, but even though this album is, you know, sort of mainstream, I definitely dig the album. I also think that this is one of their best. I really love the album. I really like Best I Can, The Thin Line, Jet City Woman, the title track, Silent Lucidity, and Hand on Heart, which is an underrated Queensryche song. Now, I mean, of course, you know, one of the biggest songs from Queensryche is on here, Jet City Woman. I mean, I could definitely see why. It's very catchy, very radio-friendly. And of course, you know, Silent Lucidity is another one of their biggest songs. It's a more ballad-like song, and I dig it. I love the sort of mood and dark vibe that you get with this song. I think it's a really great song. But yeah, Empire is definitely more commercial, more mainstream sounding, but I definitely like it. But yeah, I think this might actually be another one of their best, but I don't know. It's like I said, it's really hard to choose a favorite Queensryche album, but yeah. Empire is just, it's definitely a great album. And then we got Promised Land. Now, I actually think this might be another one of their best. Yeah, definitely underrated and definitely different compared to what Queensryche kind of used to be. You can kind of tell with this album they're heading in a more, I don't want to say alternative direction, but I think they're, I guess, more so expanding that commercial sound that you got with Empire. But I still really like this album. I think it's, well, a great album. I really like IMI, Bridge, the title track, and Disconnected, and some others, of course. Definitely a very great album, of course. Definitely one of their darkest albums. Probably is their darkest album, but yeah. This is definitely an underrated album, I'd say. So, Promised Land, I think it's a great album. And then, next up, we got Here and the Now Frontier. Now, there was a point where I really struggled trying to get into this album. Like, my first few listens, I just wasn't really feeling it. But this album has surprisingly grown on me a lot, especially recently here. But yeah, I do like this album now. Still not one of their best, of course, but I do like the album. It's kind of a alternative rock, alternative metal type sound with this album. And it's also kind of commercial sounding. I really like songs like Cuckoo's Nest, The Voice Inside, Some People Fly, and You, of course. But yeah, Here in the Now Frontier, not one of their best, but I do like the album. I think it's a good album. So lastly, for the 90s era of Queensryche, we got Q2K. Now, I know there's some people that just don't like this album at all. I think the album is just decent. This album has some highlights. I like Falling Down, and I like Breakdown. I think these are some really good songs. But this album definitely has some problems. The replay value is not the strongest with this album. the problem with this album is it just sounds like a bunch of filler songs or B-side songs. This album kind of feels like they took all the B-sides that were meant to be on Here in the Now Frontier or something and just created an album with it, and this came the result, Q2K. But yeah, Q2K, once again, not one of their best, but I don't think it's a bad album. I think it's just decent. But yeah. Well, there you go, guys. That is my era review for the 80s and 90s era of Queensryche. If you have not checked out Queensryche yet, you should definitely do so. They're a really great band, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. What's your favorite album in terms of both these eras and all that stuff? Just let me know your thoughts. So thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and take care.